Now we came across this on top there and looked down, and it looked like a little chain of lakes down there, and it was almost time to make camp, so we decided, boy, that's ideal. Well, it was a sorry decision, because afterward, after we had our camp made up there, we started walking around. We were just on a floating bog, and the more we walked and moved around, the higher the water come above and it was practically floating. Our bunks, our sleeping bags, everything got wet. Now that's the start of the sand dunes. It's kind of a funny deal there. Nobody knows where they came from, but they stretch out there. This is kind of following the Kobuk River for about 30 miles. And at the start of those sand dunes, and where we covered clear down to Shungnak, is they call this the natives don't go in there at all. They call this Never Land. They're very suspicious, and they call that the land of the little people, almost like the Irish with their leprechauns. Now this is just about getting out of the end of the sand dunes there, looking across that Kobuk River Valley over there. That's the Brooks Range over there. We're in the Warren Mountains here. The Brooks Range runs pretty high. They run 10,000 feet right from practically sea level. And the ones we followed, the Warren Mountains, were not as high. They were probably 3,000 feet. And they weren't as steep in the terrain. They were more gentle. This is one of the many little beaver dam lakes that were formed. Whenever you hit the low ground in there, you run into this water. All the underneath there, it's all the ground is permafrost. Now this is the Wien airline. This plane comes in. Comes in once a week, and that's an old retired Army colonel there. He flies that plane. It's a Norseman, and it's a workhorse. We come into Shungnak here, which is there was what they called a CAA station. During World War II, they ferried planes across this way over to Siberia and Russia, and this was one of the landing fields they had to stop over. This is the downtown part of Shungnak. This is the second village we hit. Shungnak and Kobuk would be the third, but they're only about 5 miles apart. Shungnak is upriver from this. But summertime they use the river as the transportation. Wintertime they use the river too, only on ice and snowshoes or dog team. This is a little sawmill they had rigged up there. There's some ducks out there in the river. Now we're going up to Kobuk. The two villages are very close together. Now these are two large jade boulders they had in Kobuk. They brought them down from the Menelik River, which is probably 20 miles upriver from here. And Menelik means jade, and it's where all, but they had these boulders, they didn't know what to do with them here, so they're just sitting in town. There again are your dogs on a short tether. This is Guy Moyer. He's a white trapper, and he married the Eskimo woman, and that's his son there. Their summertime, they live in tents, but in the wintertime, now he has a cabin up on the Noatak, Lake Noatak, and they're down here to get resupplies, and they brought their furs back, and this is their vacation. But they'll be heading back up to Noatak Lake there in probably a month. That again is the salmon mostly drying the dog food for the next winter. That's the beachfront cabins of Kobuk. There it is. Got so you stood out in the rain and didn't even feel it. But we're starting to get a little beaten up here. Our clothes were starting to get beat up, and of course we lost a lot of weight. I lost about 30 pounds on this trip. It was in good flesh. I wish I was that way now. Now this is, we got to the Kobuk River, and we're having lunch on a little knoll here, and this guy came from behind. He whooped to us, and I'll tell you, he just about scared the britches off of us. But it was an old Eskimo hunter. He was after caribou up here. He had a boat down on the river there, but he was after something to take back to his family. Couldn't talk any English. This is town of Kobuk back again. That's another valley we crossed there. You could see there's a river in there. And a lot of these rivers, when you're up in here, they zigzag. They're snaky. Sometimes you'll go 4 miles and just go forward 300 yards because they snake back and forth. Now this is a lake, well, we called it Beaver Lake there. It's a pretty good sized lake. There was a big beaver dam, must have been 1,000 feet, that really formed that lake. And it was very large sized. This is part of the beaver dam, but it stretched. It had it was a really their house and the dam at the same time. Made an enormous lake there. Now this is the river coming out of the lake there. We called it Beaver River. It was a fast stream. Well, Jones made it first across and strung our guide wire, because that water was going so fast it tried to wash you down. As you can see there, we needed a stick to keep our balance. It was pretty touchy. That's the lake stretching up there, and you can see the river coming out that we crossed. There's the river coming out. And this is the Little Beaver. Now this is our bear hunting expedition. That the saddle to the far right over there, we had been stormed in there for 4 days, and we came this way. We crossed that little creek, and we were taking a break on this little bluff over there, and the guys looked back. One of them spotted, we thought it was a bear moving there. As you can see, that little black spot in the center of the picture. Well, 4 guys went back with the guns and left the other 4 with the packs. And we were going to get some bear meat, so we started back, and this is getting the bear. As it turned out, it could have been, it was pretty scary after the whole thing ended. That's Painter going after him. We had a 300 Savage and a 12 gauge shotgun with a pumpkin ball. That's the bear right out in the middle there. He missed the first shot, and then he started coming towards us, and that's when all heck broke loose, because we'd hit him with the 300 and it'd just go whop, And it ended up at close range there. We used a 12 gauge with the pumpkin ball, and we'd hit 'em with the pumpkin ball and spin 'em completely around. Well, it turned out that we shot our ammunition, and we looked around, and there was 4 other bears we didn't even see. We were surrounded by them. And these trees are pretty small up there, and we scooted up over branches there because all we had left were 38 specials, and I wouldn't even shoot. It's like shooting a bear with a BB gun. So we stood there, stayed in the trees almost 2 hours. Now, here's a good example of the rivers when they snake back and forth. Well, anyhow, we did cut the loin out of them, and those guys that were left over there, we could hear them hollering. They didn't know what happened to us all this time. But as it turned out, the bear meat wasn't worth it. It was fresh, and we had no refrigeration. We cooked the first batch up, and it was awful strong. It wasn't almost palatable. And Doc, he said he'd never go bear hunting again unless he's got 75 millimeter. Now, this is one of the numerous rivers here. As we went along, we named most of them after ourselves. This is the Paulin River, and it was a moose crossing here too. This is a gentle one here. Now, this is the Reed River. We were making a crossing here when the plane come in for his drop, and he carried almost 2 rations with him, but you'll see him, he went upstream and dropped, but in so doing, he hit that sandbar, and the rations rolled into the river. We lost him. You'll see him going upstream here. That's how low he was, right down almost on the sandbar. Here he comes. And there goes the rations and kaplash into the river on the other side. Now he's coming back down. Watch his left wheel. See him coming down? He got so low that he bounced off the sandbar. All I could hear was the noise, and he bounced, raised him up, and then he was just, now he's almost at stall speed here, and it took him, I thought we were going to have 2 more people, him and his roustabout, the mechanic, walking with us. The way we'd cross like this here, we'd send Jones, generally, the sergeant, get in the boat upstream and paddle over to the other side. And once we got on the other side, while we'd get to, or he'd pull to this one, he could carry the wire in the boat with him. But when we got to the Kobuk, we had it took us a half a day to cross that river. Now, this is about the 10th of August, and there's this was the mountain's first snow, and it turned cold. It would start freezing from here. We hit a big valley going through over here about 40 miles, and this is what it looks like. That's muskeg. Not easy walking. And then on top of that, someplace they have what they call niggerheads. It's the clump grass that grows right up. You almost have to step over each one. If you go 100 yards, man, you're beat. The only thing about from here on in, it started freezing at night pretty good, and up until 2 in the afternoon or so, you had pretty good walking because that ground had a crust on it, would freeze, and you could stay on the top pretty well. This is a burn area we run into there, about 40 miles. That was good walking because the brush was all burned out of it, and it was easy going. The ground was crusty, and we made some of our best time. This pair of retired boots, you could see where they're separating from the sole to the uppers. They just rotted out on us.